Welcome to Produce Talks.
This whole business is based on relationship and friendships.
Food is darn simple.
What can we do? What are other countries doing?
How important it is for industry to be talking about this.
We're going back to the farm. We're going back to the whole food.
Hi, I'm Wally Burns, the Education and Training Manager at CPMA. CPMA would like to acknowledge Nature Fresh Farms as our Produce Talks series sponsor. Find out more about Nature Fresh Farms and how they are growing for a kinder future at www.naturefresh.ca. You can keep up with them on Instagram or Twitter at nature_fresh and on Pinterest at naturefresh, along with other social media. Today, we discuss saving money on your home food budget. We welcome Jen Ong Tone, who is the registered dietitian here at CPMA, as she discusses money-saving tips with Christina Iaboni and Laurence Vizina. They will give us some tips and insights on stretching your dollars while continuing to eat healthy with fruits and vegetables. Take it away, Jen.
Thank you, Wally. I'm here to talk about a topic that impacts everyone, and that's how to save money on food. As we all know, the cost of food has increased, including the cost of fruits and veggies, which went up an average of 12% this past year. But that doesn't mean that healthy eating needs to be compromised. In fact, fresh fruits and veggies can still be part of a healthy, affordable diet. And as a registered dietitian with CPMA, I'm flattered to be moderating today's podcast. I've worked as a dietitian for more than 10 years with hundreds of clients, including as a retail dietitian for Loblaws, and have developed a good understanding of the food and nutrition challenges faced by Canadians. I now work on our Half Your Plate consumer education program at CPMA, which helps Canadians fill half their plate with fruits and veggies. And more recently, our Half Your Plate team has been working on practical consumer resources that tackle food costs and food waste to help support Canadians, like infographics, short videos, and digital guides. So how can we save money on produce? What do those practical tips look like? Joining me today are Christina Iaboni and Laurence Vizina, where we'll be exploring this topic further. Christina and Laurence, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, thanks for having us.
Christina, can you tell me a bit more about your background and your line of work?
Sure. I've also been a dietitian for about 10 years, just like you. I've worked this whole time part-time in a clinical role where my focus is on mental health. And then part-time, I focus on my blog and I do recipe development, which centers around helping Canadians prepare easy and affordable meals. So my goal with my blog is to help people eat healthier without spending a lot of money.
Excellent. Thanks for that. And Laurence, thanks for making time for us out of your busy school schedule. Can you tell me a bit more about your background and what you're studying?
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually certified in holistic nutrition, and I'm currently doing a bachelor degree in dietetic at U Ottawa.
Wonderful. So Christina, understanding that your private practice is a little bit more focused on affordable nutrition, how have price increases affected, both you personally and your clients this past year?
Well, I think everybody is feeling price increases. I saw something again on the news about it this morning. For my family personally, I found we never really ate out at restaurants a lot. I have 2 little kids, and so going out to restaurants is a lot of effort with them. But I find we're doing it even less now. So really trying to cook at home more because it's cost less. And I find I look for a lot of and I encourage my clients to do the same. But if you're at the grocery store and you see things like proteins, like meats or chicken, with the sticker on them that's reduced because the date is about to come up, I've been buying a lot of those lately, and then I just put them in my freezer right away. Sometimes you can get things like 30 to 50% off.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's the sticker method. I think we're all looking for those stickers. They're a great way of saving money. Laurence, how about you? And, as a student, I can only imagine how tough it is to stretch your food dollar in today's environment. I remember myself as a university student, it's tough making ends meet. You've got your food costs, your rent, your school supplies. And now with inflation, we're seeing really a record number of students across the country experiencing even some forms of food security. So how have food prices affected you this past year?
Well, definitely less treat on my side. Like I don't go to the restaurant as much. Like I would even say that I barely go. I used to go like at least once or twice a week as a treat, and now it's maybe like once or twice a month. And also when I go grocery shopping, like I used to not care too much about what's on special or not, and now I definitely like have to look at the specials and plan a bit more. And like if there's something I really feel like eating this week, but it's not on special, then I'm just gonna leave it on the shelf. 2 weeks ago, I think I wanted celery and it was $7. So I was just like, yeah, I'll do the recipe without it.
Yeah, so I think it's becoming a little bit more hyper aware of, pricing and what that looks like in the grocery store. And for both of you, seems like less restaurant outings, which, translates to more home cooked meals, which, isn't a bad thing. Laurence, are you seeing kind of those same challenges with other students as well?
I mean, definitely, like some people just eat pasta with butter because it's really cheap. So unfortunately, like they're not really focusing on their health because of the prices. So yeah, I think it's affecting everybody.
So Christina, kind of going back to like those tips that we're providing to clients on how to save money, are there any like specific tips you look at when it comes down to produce, when you're talking produce with your clients, on how to save money there?
So I think also I look for the reduced stickers on produce as well. If the date's kind of approaching and you think you can eat it in time, I think that's a big part of it. Because if you see a big package of greens and they're reduced, but you can't eat it in 2 days, then you don't want to waste it. But if you can eat it, and I think sometimes it actually, when I see them, it encourages me to eat more veggies because I know that we have to kind of consume them first. Also looking for things that have a longer shelf life, like things like broccoli, head of broccoli can last a couple of weeks in the fridge. Carrots last a long time and they're usually always a good price. So just relying on things that are a good price and have a long shelf life, because wasted food is just wasted money, right? And especially when you're paying, I'm not going to pay $7 for celery either, but you would hate to see it go to waste if that was how much you paid for it. So making sure that you can actually eat everything that you buy. I actually find trying to limit my trips to the grocery store helps so that I can try and make sure that I'm using as much as I can in my house before I go and buy more.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of forces you to be a bit more creative too, right? If you have just like a few odds and ends left over of different veggies, maybe you can like mix them up into an omelet or a soup and just think of different ways to use them.
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes hand in hand with, if you're going to the store, let's say once a week, then meal planning really helps, right? I think everyone hates coming home and, you get home from work, it's 5 o'clock. I myself am a mom of 2 young kids, and trying to figure out dinners, it can be a daily challenge, but meal planning, I find myself personally has been really helpful with, reducing kind of the stress of what to eat, and also providing, healthy balanced meals on your plates. Laurence, do you tend to meal plan, throughout the week?
I definitely have to, especially because of the price of food. So the first thing I always do is look in my fridge, what's left over. So if I have like some produce, especially that will probably go bad, well, I try to like use them first, and then I will look at the specials, and then I will just try to find recipes where I can incorporate all of these things. If I don't have any inspiration, well, I just like sometimes go on Google and put like red cabbage recipe, for example. So I will find ways to use whatever I have left and whatever is on special together. So I don't waste, and then I save money. And yeah, it's definitely very useful.
Yeah, I think that's great. And, we have a lot of recipes that feature produce on our Half Your Plate website. As well as I heard, some comments from both of you on shelf life. We actually have a really great infographic, a shelf life guide that shows Canadians, how long your fruits and vegetables will last, because, everything has a different shelf life. When you're talking about raspberries, it's a couple of days versus apples, it's a couple of weeks, and it can really help, kind of plan your meals. The next thing I kind of want to talk about is shopping the flyer. We're seeing a lot more consumers today becoming a little bit more aware of store specials and using the flyer more as a way to save money. Christina, I'm curious for your thoughts there and how that's helped you and how that's helped your clients?
I shop the flyers. I don't get paper flyers, but I use an app and I look at them online and price match, so that I don't have to go to different stores. But I know not every store price matches. I'm lucky in the area that I live in. I'm able to price match, but I definitely use them. Like I know last week, I think I was able to price match cauliflower. It was $1.87 somewhere instead of like, sometimes I've seen it lately for like $4 to $5. So I looked at the flyers. My family enjoys cauliflower, so I price match cauliflower and we'll have it as our veggie one night for dinner. So I usually will shop the specials and plan around that. My family's not too picky with fruits, but we usually do rely on a lot of like, just kind of like the common ones too, that are always a good price, like apples, bananas, oranges. I'll usually look and see what variety of apples is on sale, or if I can get a bigger bag of them on sale, because like you mentioned, apples will last a couple of weeks in the fridge. And I think whether you're buying for one person or a bigger family, even if you ended up with a bag of apples, then for one person, then maybe every day for the next week or so, you're having an apple, which is not a bad thing.
Yeah, exactly. They make really practical snacks and to pack for your kids' lunches, and great to bring to work, right? Very portable, I would say. So I'm seeing a lot of apps right now that are available in the marketplace to help save money on food. Christina, do you find there's any apps that you're using or that you've heard about?
Yeah, I've been using the app Flip for a long time. So you could look at all the flyers. You put in your postal code, so the flyers for your area will come up with your local specials. And I'll usually scan all the flyers before I go shopping to see what produce is on sale. And, if I know I want to buy apples, I'll look and see which store has the lowest price on apples. And I find even if it's, a difference of like 20 cents a pound, sometimes like it can still add up over time. And another one that I've used a couple of times, but there's not too many stores in my area, but I know a few people who use it more. It's called Too Good to Go. So towards the end of the day, grocery stores or restaurants will put different like surprise bags on the app. So you can get a produce bag, for example, and it'll be reduced by about 2/3 of the store price. And the thing is, though, you don't know what you're getting. So you have to be willing to, be surprised with what you get, and, could inspire you to be creative with some new vegetables or fruits. Maybe go online after and see how you can use something if it's not something you typically buy. So I think it could be a fun way to save some money on produce and reduce waste.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip. Laurence, do you have any favorite apps that you like to use?
Yeah, I use Reebee, which is a little bit like Flip. So you have all the flyers, and then you can actually like click on the items you want to buy, and it builds a list for you. So it's very useful. You can use it pretty much everywhere depending on your postal code. And I also know about Food Hero. I haven't used that one, but it's a little bit like Too Good to Go. So you're just going to have a look at all the grocery stores and what's about to go bad. And then everything is like, 30, 40, 50% off. And you can just, I think, like buy it online and just go to the store and pick it up, if I'm not mistaken. So that's another good way to save money, although you might have to like go to different stores.
Yeah. And that's something, we try and do with our Half Your Plate program with our Fresh 20 campaign. I don't know if either of you have seen it before, but what we try and do is we pick different cities across Canada, and we actually show Canadians, when you shop the flyer, like look at how many fruits and vegetables you're getting. And it really makes a difference when you're shopping the flyer. It's a great way to kind of meal plan your meals around specials as a way to save money. So encourage our listeners to check that out. We've got some really great reels on our Instagram as well. The next thing I want to talk about is seasonality. Shopping in season is a great way to, save money. I know we're in the middle of winter now, so not much is in season right now. But the summer months are great to take advantage of that. Laurence, do you tend to shop like seasonally?
I would say it's not my strength. The main reason for that is I will just look at the flyer and buy what's on special. So, automatically, usually what's on season is also like kind of like cheaper. Otherwise, in the summer, I like going to farmers markets, but I actually find the food or the produce to be like maybe more expensive than what you can find at the store. So because of the money factor, I would say it's not a priority. But if it's also cheaper, then I will definitely opt for the seasonal option.
Yeah. And yeah, we go to farmers market, grocery stores, a lot of different places to get our groceries. And it can be a big price difference. I think even between different grocery stores and farmers markets that you go to. So I hear you on that. Christina, do you tend to shop seasonally as well as a way to save money?
I try to, yeah. Like in the fall, I'll buy a lot of like butternut squash. I really like pumpkins. I'll even buy pumpkin and after Halloween, and I'll buy some of the smaller ones and then I cook them up and puree them and then I put it in the freezer to kind of use throughout the year, but I buy it when it's in season. My kids really love berries, like strawberries and raspberries, which tend to be more expensive at this time of year. So sometimes I'll tell them that too. I'll say, oh, I didn't buy strawberries this week because, I bought oranges because oranges are in season and they were a better price. I'll sort of buy them if they're on sale for them, but I do try and shop seasonally because you do get better prices.
Yeah. And I think it's a good opportunity as well. Like if you have the green space in wherever you're living to take advantage of gardening, sometimes even starting a balcony garden is a great way to kind of grow your own fruits and vegetables during those short summer months. We at home, we have like a big berry patch and my kids love to pick those fresh fruit. And I think it's a great way to teach your kids about, where your food is grown as well. And to really understand, the work that's involved in harvesting fresh fruits and vegetables. Do you think, Christina, that people or Canadians have a good understanding of what fruits and vegetables are in season and when?
I think there's some that people know more than others. Like in the fall, I think a lot of people know, we'll go apple picking. And so you'll hear about, the apple orchards opening up on TV. And so I think strawberries in the summer, I think there's some that are more common than others. But I don't know if everybody is aware of it.
Yeah. How about you, Laurence? Like, do you feel like you've got a good understanding of like seasonal produce, or do you find it's something you can learn more as a student?
Well, like Christina said, I think that for some of them, like there's a general awareness, like berries, apples, etc. But I would say that maybe for veggies, I kind of tend to have no idea.
Yeah, I know it's really it can be a mystery, right? I mean, and I think it's also what parts of Canada you live in, because there's different growing seasons all across the country. One resource I will say that we've developed that I think is really handy is we've actually created a produce seasonality guide. It's like a quick 2-pager that shows you, when different fruits and vegetables are in season. And I think it's a really good guide that can help shoppers, understand when your fruits and vegetables are in their prime. So it's a great way to get, fresh in season produce.
And I think, we're very fortunate. I live in Toronto, but in Ontario, we grow like greenhouse veggies and some fruits all year, right? So you could probably always find greenhouse strawberries, or you could probably find Ontario greenhouse strawberries now.
Mm-hmm.
And so that may kind of confuse people at times, right? Because you're getting something local that maybe you wouldn't expect. It might be hard for someone to know what's in season if you can always get it.
Yeah.
Right. Like you can always get some of the greenhouse vegetables, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But it may confuse people about what's actually in season. Tomatoes in the summer, I think, taste a little bit different than tomatoes in the winter. But we're lucky to be able to get the greenhouse vegetables all year.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. I mean, we're lucky in Canada. We've got like a great growing season, and we've got those greenhouses that can help support us with those, those local veggies, even sometimes local fruit. That grow there as well, that is available most times of the year. So great to have that as well as another source of local produce. I wanted to maybe shift the conversation to frozen fruits and vegetables, because frozen fruits and vegetables, they can be a great economical way to save money on fruits and vegetables. Oftentimes you'll hear from consumers asking, are they less healthy? Any thoughts on that, Christina?
I always encourage people to get frozen fruits and vegetables. They're not less healthy. I think a lot of the fruits and vegetables now are frozen right away at their peak of freshness. And we know that freezing, that method of preserving food allows the fruits and veggies to retain their nutrients. I usually keep some in my cupboard or in my freezer at home just to have on hand for easy meals or snacks. Like I find things like my kids really like, and I like it too, like frozen mango, and it's all cut up for you. It tends to be, I think it's at a pretty good price compared to what you would pay for buying all those mangoes. So yeah, I like to have some on hand. And it's like I was saying, we like berries in our family, but they're not always in season now and they tend to be more expensive. So I'll buy frozen ones, like frozen blueberries, and put them in oatmeal or muffins, or just have as a snack with yogurt.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's great. And Laurence, are you using frozen fruits and veggies at home? Are they a regular staple in your menu?
Yeah, definitely fruits. I'm a big fan of smoothies, so frozen fruits are definitely a go-to because it's definitely less expensive. Also, like we were talking about apples, oranges, bananas earlier, like I tend to call them the boring fruit. So they're like the cheaper, but also like not the best. Well, for me. So frozen fruits are like a saver because they're less expensive, and then I can enjoy berries and mangoes and other type of fruits that I just wouldn't buy because of the price, especially like in the winter. And then for frozen veggies, I don't really buy them usually because like there's a huge variety of veggies on specials every week, so I can just like buy them fresh, but they're definitely useful like when you don't have time or.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we like to have a mix of fresh and frozen at home just to, as kind of like a backup. I find it's really nice. You come home and you're a little low in stock in some produce items in your fridge. It's great to have them on hand, steam them up really quickly, even putting them. I'm actually amazed at like putting them in the air fryer and how you can cook them up that way as well. It's really fun. So maybe what we'll do is we'll just kind of shift the convo into, people who are living alone versus in larger households. I think, as a dietitian, having worked with lots of different clients, you've seen people in very different living situations. And I think people kind of tend to adapt kind of their shopping practices depending on, if they're living with others or if they're living alone. Laurence, like, what's your shopping like in your household?
So I have one roommate, just so you know, and then we both buy our own foods, but we're going to cook together. So whatever is in the fridge is available for both people. We're both students, so even if like there's two of us, we don't really buy in bulk. It can be cheaper, like on the long run. Well, it's actually obviously cheaper. But the thing is, you don't necessarily always have like the money available to go to Costco and buy for like $200 or $300. And also as a student living in an apartment, like you don't necessarily have the room, whether it's in your fridge or your cupboards or your pantry. So yeah, that's pretty much what it looks like. We look at the specials and we go food shopping every week. Yeah, and also because it's just the two of us. Sometimes buying in bulk can lead to waste because we don't have time to like use everything so that's pretty much what it looks like.
Yeah, those are some really good tips that, I heard from you, is just being a little bit more mindful sometimes of how much you're buying when you're less people in the house, not wanting to waste food, right? So I think those are some great tips there. And Christina, do you have any tips for people living alone versus in a larger household?
I think I agree with a lot of what Laurence said. But yeah, you don't want to waste. And some things, yeah, it may be cheaper to buy, a larger bag of rice or pasta. But if you don't have room for it, then that's obviously an issue. But some things can be cheaper to buy in bulk, especially if they do have a long shelf life. And I also just encourage people to like look at the unit price, or even, like maybe between roommates, if you could share a larger bag of something, or say like, sometimes sweet potatoes will cost 99 cents a pound or $1.49 a pound, but you can get a bigger bag of, 5 pounds for $4. So maybe you can share them between roommates, splitting things with people sometimes. Like I know sometimes, in the fall, like a 10-pound bag of carrots costs less than a 3-pound bag of carrots. So I'll sometimes share them with someone. because mentally I can't buy the 3 pounds when the 10 pounds cost less. So I'll share them with my sister or someone, really trying to look at prices. And I even think for fruits, like if you pick, or veggies, if you pick, maybe 2 to 3 a week of each, if you're living alone, and then if you're not going to eat a whole bag of apples, maybe you just buy, 3 or 4 apples, 4 or 5 bananas, some oranges, or, something that's on sale if it's like berries that week, and buying enough that that you can eat that amount before they go bad.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's interesting. You also talked about like the weight of fruit, like buying it per pound versus buying a bag. And, I found like when I worked as a retail dietitian, it's, I saw that sometimes like consumers were kind of confused as, what is a pound? What is a pound of apples, or what does a pound of sweet potatoes look like? And using the scales, the store scale, to kind of measure that can kind of give you a good indication of what prices look like per pound. You also mentioned, Christina, unit price. I think that's something that I think we both understand, but it might not be something that maybe your listeners might understand. Do you want to explain that a little bit more, what unit pricing means?
Sure. I find it a lot on like rice, flour, like a lot of sort of more like the pantry staples. So when you see the cost for like the total cost for something at the grocery store on the shelf, in smaller print, they'll usually break it down into how much it costs per 100 grams. So then you can easily compare 2 products. And actually, so say you're comparing flour, if you look at the name brand of flour versus the store brand, you'll be able to compare the prices per 100 grams. So if it's the same weight, you can see how much they cost per 100 grams to look for the better buy. Usually, as a package gets larger, it costs a little bit less per 100 grams. Oats are another one I see it on a lot. So if you think you're going to go through the bag of oats, it might cost less per 100 grams to buy a bigger bag.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip. Laurence, have you like noticed that, like unit prices when you do your shopping?
Yeah, I definitely look at that. And even like sometimes you have an item on special, and then when you look at the unit price, it's still more expensive than another item like the store brand or another brand. So yeah, I definitely tend to look at this.
Great. Yeah, I found like when I first learned about it, I was like amazed at seeing like, oh my God, like this is such an easy system, because if not, you're just doing tons of math, and who wants to spend, that much time doing math in the grocery store? So I think it's a really good tip talking about unit price. So I wanted to kind of shift the conversation and talk a little bit about food waste, because I think it was Christina that was saying, wasted food is actually wasted money. And unfortunately, because, fresh fruits and vegetables are perishable, they're one of the top foods that get thrown out by Canadians. In fact, there was a research study that was released that showed that households waste on average 20% of the food they buy each week. And I know in my household, as much as we try and reduce our food waste at home, it is a challenge to avoid wasting food, especially as a mom of 2 young kids who are, still being exposed to new foods. It can be a challenge to waste less food. Laurence, do fruits and veggies tend to get tossed in your household?
Not that much, because I feel really bad when it happens. So I try not to make it happen by planning better. But unfortunately, it does still happen from time to time.
Yeah, I think it's something we try and avoid as much as possible, right? And it just happens. How about you, Christina?
I find we don't waste too much. But like you, Jen, like my kids are young and still being exposed to new foods. So sometimes, I'll buy a different veggie and they don't eat it. I do try, because I am lucky to be able to have the space to buy things in bulk. If I bought too many bananas one week and they are starting to go brown, I'll throw them in the freezer so that I can make banana bread or muffins or something when I have time. Or if it's like veggies, I find like you can freeze a lot of them. So if I bought too many peppers and I don't think I'm going to use them before they go bad, I'll roast them in the oven and then take the skin off after and put them in the freezer. And then you have like one night for dinner, we'll have roasted peppers. So I'll try and, prepare them somehow to freeze something so that I'm not wasting them. Or even like if I bought too much spinach, I would maybe like put it in the food processor and freeze it in small amounts. And then I can add it to like soups or a sauce or something like that. So I'll try and freeze things before they go bad, so I'm not throwing them out.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic tip, is like, if you have the storage space in your freezer and something is kind of close to going bad. I mean, we don't want to be storing food that's kind of gone past its shelf life. But if it's close to going bad, it's still looking good, and you don't plan on eating in the next few days, like your freezer is just such a great space for that, right? So I think that's a great tip, Christina. So before we kind of talk about food waste a little bit more, I thought it'd be fun to kind of just play a little food waste game with you. Because one of the strategies I've learned over the years is that by properly storing your fruits and vegetables, you can make them last longer. So I've got 4 food waste questions for you. And maybe we'll start with Laurence. So Laurence, where do you think is the best place to store your apples? Is it on the countertop, in the fridge, in the pantry? What do you think?
I would say the fridge.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. So apples, a lot of people tend to store them on the counter, but keeping them in the fridge, you'll actually prolong the shelf life of it. So if you're keeping your apples in the countertop, you might want to switch and think about putting them in the fridge. Christina, how about potatoes? Where do you think the best place to store potatoes is?
In a cool, dark place.
Exactly. Yeah. Potatoes, they're very prone to light. That can really make it go bad quicker when it's exposed to light. So like you said, in a cool, dark place. I've actually learned that, potatoes shouldn't be stored next to your onions because that can make it go bad quicker. So keeping some space around there. Laurence, how about tomatoes? Where do you think is the best place to store those?
I'm not sure. I personally leave them on the counter because I find they taste better, but maybe the fridge is a better option for not wasting them.
Yeah, it's kind of tricky, that one. Tomatoes, actually, you're right. You're perfectly right when you say that tomatoes, they taste better on the countertop. That's the best place to keep them for optimal flavor. When you store them in the fridge, they do tend to kind of change the texture and the taste of it. So keeping them on the countertop is the best spot. And Christina, how about storage of delicate herbs like cilantro and parsley? What's like your tip, or what do you think is the best place to store them so they last longer?
What I will do usually is I try and only wash what I need, and then I will wrap up the bunch in a paper towel and store it in the fridge.
Yeah, so that's one way of doing it. I found like with those delicate herbs, like when I was first buying them, I would just take them and put them in the fridge, and then I'd get so frustrated after a few days seeing them go bad. And then only when I discovered like how to properly store them, like it can really prolong its shelf life. So that's one way of doing it. What you're saying, Christine, is just washing and then storing them in a paper towel and a Ziploc is one way of doing it. I find what's practical too is storing them like you would flowers. So putting them in a little glass jar with a bit of water, putting the produce bag over top and keeping it in the fridge. It's making my herbs last, up to 2 weeks, going from a couple of days to up to 2 weeks. I really find that's been helpful. So to our listeners, I encourage you to check out our produce storage infographic on halfyourplate.ca for tips on how to store your fruits and vegetables. It's a really great guide. Laurence, do you have any other tips for reducing like food waste at home?
Not really. I would say that planning for me is probably like what helps me the most in avoiding food waste. So that's definitely like my number one tip. Otherwise, I think learning about everything you were talking about, like storage life, and then how to like properly also store your fruits and veggies, whether it's like in the fridge, on the counter, and how, like I just learned about the herbs, like to like store them like as flowers. So like with the water and everything. So that's definitely new for me. And, yeah, I think that people are just not aware on like necessarily how to properly do these things, and it can help a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And Christina, any kind of like final tips on reducing waste at home?
The one thing, I don't remember where I heard this, but I've done it a few times, and it's just to wait one more day before going to the grocery store. Because I find if you go to the grocery store, before you're really low on a lot of things, then I know personally, like I'll tend to sometimes like forget about the stuff that I still had left. So I try and buy, some vegetables that last a bit longer, and then try and wait another day before I go to the store and use up a little bit more of what I have. And it can force you to be a little bit more creative with your cooking. sometimes too, and maybe just, alter recipes a little bit based on what you have and what you need to use up. But I find it forces me to use a little bit more of what I have before I go and buy more things.
Yeah, I find that I think that's a really good tip. And I myself, I found that, when the pandemic happened and we were all kind of forced to stay at home longer, it really forced our household to really dig into our freezers and use like some of those items that just are kind of sometimes backup foods, and just kind of getting through that as opposed to buying, new food all the time. So I think that's a really good tip, just to wait that extra day. And I think when we're talking about food waste, I think it's also important to talk about food safety, because we obviously don't want to be eating food that's gone bad. Are there any recommendations for how long, leftovers can stay fresh in the fridge?
I try and make sure, like if we have leftovers, I'll try and usually eat them within 2 to 3 days. That's sort of my general rule. If I really don't think, like if I made a big pot of soup or something that I don't think we're going to eat right away or within a couple of days, I'll try and freeze it in smaller containers and then just like take it out throughout the week for lunch, just to prevent any spoilage.
Yeah, excellent. And are you labeling your containers to kind of avoid the
yeah
the mystery container in the freezer?
Yeah, I'll try and I'll use my like yogurt containers and then just write on them with what I put in there and the date. Try and keep a mental note of what I have in there to take out for lunch or something like that.
So if there's one final tip that, you could share with, our listeners today to save money on produce, what would it be? Let's start with you, Christina.
Actually, one thing that I hadn't mentioned yet, but I see it a lot at the store, is not buying things that are already pre-cut up.
Mm-hmm.
So you definitely pay a price for that convenience. But even last week I saw a bag of broccoli florets that had already been washed and cut up, and it was reduced by 30%, and the bag was $5 to start with. And I was going to pick it up, and then I thought about it a little bit more, and I thought, I think a head of broccoli is still probably cheaper than buying this bag. So I think, being conscious of prices, and also, buying whole carrots instead of baby carrots. And if you want pineapple, buy the whole pineapple and not the cut up one. So setting some time aside, maybe on Sundays or whenever works with your schedule, to do a little bit of prep rather than buying things that are pre-cut, and really reducing food waste. Trying your best to use what you have.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Those are really good tips. And Laurence, how about you? Any kind of final tips to share with our listeners on saving money on produce?
I think it's important to add the fun factor in the kitchen, because usually one of the things that you're going to do as a student or as anyone is just going to the restaurant or ordering, going for takeout because you don't feel like cooking and everything. So just make it fun. Even if you live by yourself, just play some good music and everything. So that I would say that it's even maybe step one, because if you don't like cooking, then you're going to reach for the easy option, which is not always the cheaper one. So definitely a mix of different things, like meal planning, looking at what's in your fridge, looking at the flyers, and then also learning how to store properly, how to freeze produce. I know that for fruits, it's really easy. You can just basically put it in the freezer. But what about veggies? Like Christina was mentioning, the roasted peppers or the spinach that she's just going to put in her food processor. That's not something I would think of. So just having access to resources that tell you all of these things. Yeah, I think they're all good tips to avoid food waste and also to save money.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think it's, sometimes it's about inspiration. You buy a head of cabbage and then you use a little bit in a stir fry, and then you're like, what am I going to do with the rest of this? Right. So, at Half Your Plate, we've got lots of great, recipes and produce cards on all the different fruits and vegetables that give you tips on, how to use them and how to incorporate them into your meal plan. So, be sure to check those out. I think, my final tip that I find that we haven't talked about today that I like to use for saving money is keeping a running grocery list. And I find that helpful. We have an app in our household Whenever items are kind of getting a little low, or there's like those staples that we use, we just kind of always update it, because the last thing we want to do is go to the grocery store and like double up on something. And we're like, oh my God, like 2 heads of cauliflower, you know? So that's something that I find has been helpful as well. So Christina and Laurence, I want to thank you for joining us on our podcast today to talk about saving money on produce. I encourage our listeners to visit halfyourplate.ca for free resources on how to save money and waste less food at home, and to check out our new money saving guide on our website. So thanks again, and until next time.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This was fun.
Thanks again to Laurence Vezina, Christina Iaboni, and Jen Ongtone for your ideas and experience. Remember to check out the halfyourplate.ca website for recipes and many money-saving tips. Until next time, fill half your plate with fruits and veggies, continue to seek out new knowledge, and basically never stop growing.